All right, so let's start with a little bell alert. We'll start with a little challenge question here. This is going to use what we've already learned about triangles and angles. And we're asked to find a missing angle. So you can see where the question mark is. We're asked to find that angle. And I can see that that is in a triangle. But in that triangle, I know we've got this angle all the way to the right is 17 degrees. But I don't know another angle. And we know to find the missing angle of a triangle, we need to know three angles. So I'm going to work my way backwards. I'm going to go to this first triangle to the left. You can see it's a right triangle. It's got a right angle. And in that triangle, I know the top angle is 31 degrees. I know the right angle is 90 degrees. So now I know two of the three angles in the triangle, which means I can figure out this angle right here that I'm pointing to. So I can figure that angle out by adding up the two angles I know, 90 plus 31, which is 121, and subtract from 180, because I know the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. So I can do 180 minus 121, I do that, and I get 59. So this angle right here is 59 degrees. So now I'm closer to the the triangle that I need. And let's remember what we learned about what were called vertical angles. That's when you had two lines intersecting. So if you look at this section right here, this is two intersecting angles. I'm actually going to erase that circle, so it's kind of confusing. So if this angle that we figured out was 59 degrees, that means this angle right here is also going to be 59 degrees, because those two angles are opposite angles in intersecting lines. They're vertical angles. Now, in this triangle to the right here, I know two of the three angles. I know the one angle is 59. I know the other angle is 17 degrees. So now I'm just trying to figure out the angle with the question mark. So I can add up the two I know, 59 plus 17, which is 76. And then I can do 180 minus 76, as I know three angles of a triangle add up to 180. And that will tell me that this missing angle right here is 104 degrees. So I've used what we learned. We learned that the three angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. We learned about vertical angles, and that was enough information for me to get to the answer and figure that one out. All right, so today we're going to learn about something called corresponding angles. And there's a couple things you need to understand for corresponding angles. First, you need to know what parallel lines are. Parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. So that's two lines that run the same direction and never cross each other. A good example of parallel lines is picture when you're out on the road. Picture the yellow lines in the middle of the road. Those two lines, they're parallel. They never cross each other. They just run next to each other. A transversal is a line that cuts across two or more lines. And often, for our case, it's going to cut across two parallel lines, which is going to create something that is called corresponding angles. So it's angles that are in matching corners that are created by a transversal crossing two parallel lines. So let's get a visual of what we're talking about. So there are two different examples here. In the first example, you can see this line, I'll put an X there, and this line. Those two lines are parallel to each other. And then we've got this line up here, which crosses it. That's the transversal. So in either transversal, A and angle E are equal to each other, because basically what the best way to think about this is we have two intersections that are created. The first intersection is right here. It's A, and it created angles A, B, C, and D. Our second intersection is right here, and it created angles E, F, G, and H. And when in those intersections, the corresponding angles are equal. So what that means is A equals E. You can see C and G would be the same. B and F would be the same. And finally, D and H would be the same. If we look at our next picture, it might be a little more helpful because it's in color, and you can see the colors that match up. So it's the same idea where we had two different parallel lines with a transversal crossing those lines, and then the corresponding angles are equal. We can see angles 1 and 5 are both red because they're in the top left corner of each intersection. Angles 2 and 6 are purple because they're both at the top right, so they would be equal. Angles 4 and 8 are green, and they're in the bottom left, so they would be equal. And finally, 3 and 7 are a light blue, and they would be equal because they're both in the bottom right. So Let's use this information. So in this one, we're going to figure out all these angles. You're asking, how would we possibly do that? Well, first of all, we were told up top that angle 1 is 141 degrees. So this angle right here is 141 degrees. So we're going to use that information, and we're going to be able to figure out a whole lot of stuff. So let's start with, if angle 1 is 141 degrees, what is its corresponding angle? So that would be angle 3. Angle 3 is also going to be 141 degrees because those two angles correspond to each other because they're both in the top right of their intersections. Now, there's other things we can do from stuff we've previously learned. I'm going to go back up to angle 1. If angle 1 is 141 degrees, angle 6 also has to be 141 degrees because those are vertical angles. That's an intersection, and opposite angles are going to be equal in an intersection. So that means angle 8 is also going to be 141 degrees because it's a vertical angle with angle 3, or you could think of it as angle 6 and angle 8 are corresponding angles. There's actually a couple ways to figure out that angle 8 is 141 degrees. So now we're looking at this, it's like, all right, great, we got 4 of the angles, but we still have 4 more. And that's where we can use what we learned about supplementary angles. Remember, supplementary angles are 2 angles that when put together add up to 180 degrees and make a straight line. So I want you to look at angle 1 and angle 5 up top. And I want you to imagine that everything below it wasn't there. So then if you just look at angle 1 and 5, if I kind of draw that there, that's just a straight line. So angle 1 and angle 5 have to add up to 180 degrees. So I can do 180 minus 141 and figure out that angle 5 is 39 degrees. And if I know angle 5 is 39 degrees, I can figure out the rest. So look at angle 7. Angle 5 and angle 7, they're corresponding angles because they're both in the top left of their intersections. So angle 7 is also 39 degrees. And now I can use what I know about vertical angles when we have 2 intersecting lines. Angles 5 and 2 have to be the same. So angle 2 is 39 degrees. And same thing with angles 7 and 4. 4 has to be 39 degrees. And now I've successfully figured out all 8 of those angles when I was only given one. One angle was all you needed to figure out the other 7. All right, so for this one, we need to figure out angles 1 and 2. We were given we can see one angle is 115 degrees. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out which angle corresponds with that. I look at that, it's in the bottom left, or bottom right, oh my gosh, the bottom right of its intersection. So that means angle 2 is also going to be 115 degrees because it's also in the bottom right of its intersection. Finally, and then angle 1 is also going to be 115 degrees because angles 1 and 2 are vertical angles. They're created from intersecting lines and they're opposite each other. One other thing I want to point out is if you see this little symbol right here, this little arrow that's on the line, that little symbol, since each line has that symbol, that means those 2 lines are parallel to each other. In case you see that symbol, that's what it means. All right, continuing on here. So this one, we're asked to find A, B, C, E, F, G, and H. We were given one angle there. It's 105 degrees. So my first thing I can do is, and which angle corresponds with that? Well, it's in the bottom right of its intersection, so that means angle H is also 105 degrees because they correspond. Then I'm going to look for vertical angles. So I'm going to look at angle A is a vertical with a 105 degree angle because they're across from each other, across an intersection, they're vertical angles. And same thing with angle E. Angle E is also going to be 105 degrees. So I've got 4 of the 8 angles. Now I got to figure out the other ones. So I can look up top, look at angles A and B, and I can see that they create a straight line. They are supplementary angles. They should have to add up to 180. So I can do 180 minus 105 and figure out that angle B is 75 degrees. And if I know angle B, I know angle F is also 75 degrees because they're corresponding angles. Finally, angles B and C are both going to be 75 because they're vertical angles. Same thing with F and G. And I've successfully figured all those out. So let's look at our next one here. We're asked to find angle X. We're asked to find angle X. I can see all the way over, I know an angle is 137 degrees. Don't assume that angle X is also going to be 137. Let's prove it is or it isn't. So the angle that's 137 degrees is kind of in the bottom left of my intersection. So that means this angle right here would be 137 degrees because they correspond. They're both in the bottom left. Because in this case, my parallel lines are going up and down. So now I need to figure out X. Well, if I know this angle is 137 degrees, the angle next to X, I know the two of these together make a straight line, so they add up to 180. So I can do 180 minus 137 to figure out angle X is 43 degrees. All right, let's keep going. I want you to try this one on your own. So I want you to pause the video and try to figure all of these out. You know that angle 2 is 49 degrees. So pause the video, try to figure this out. All right, you should have tried to figure these out. So I'm going to write them in for you here. Angle 2 is 49 degrees. Angle 3 is 49 degrees. Angle 6 is 49 degrees. And angle 7 is 49 degrees. So the other angles are going to be 131 degrees. So you need to pause that and look. You can see the answers there. All right. We got one more. This one's a little tricky. So this one, what I want you to look at is, so we know this line and this line. Those two lines are parallel to each other. That's actually what this little symbol, this M with two lines going up, and then an N, that means line M is parallel to line M. That's what that actually means. And you can kind of look at them and see pretty obviously that M and N are parallel. The difference with this question to the other questions we've done is we actually have two transversals here. We've got two lines, and they actually meet up top here in the middle. So it makes this kind of confusing. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to work and slowly try to figure out angles. There's no real order to go about this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look, and I'm going to see my 45-degree angle that I was given, the angle in between 10 and 5. I can see that that's 45 degrees. One thing I can do is I can find its vertical angle. I can look at my intersecting lines and see the 45 and the angle 12. They're vertical angles. They're across from each other, so they got to be the same. So I know angle 12 is 45 degrees. What else do I know about that 45-degree angle? So I know the 45-degree angle, I'm going to go down. Angle 3 corresponds with it. They're both in intersections, and they're the same angle. And now if I know angle 3, that can tells me that angle 1 is also going to be 45-degree angle. And then I can figure out angles 2 and 4, because I know that if you look at, I want you to look at angle 1 and angle 2, they create a straight line. So I can do 180 minus 45 and figure out that angle 2 is 135 degrees. And if angle 2 is 135, so is angle 4. All right, I'm making some progress here. I got that whole bottom right section. So let's go over here now to this 55-degree angle. I know if this angle is 55 degrees, I know that angle 10 is also going to be 55 degrees because those angles correspond with each other. Sorry, an alarm's going off on my phone. So the 55-degree angle and angle 10 correspond. Then I can continue in the bottom right here. If this angle is 55 degrees, angle 9 is also going to be 55 degrees because they're vertical angles. They're across from each other. And then if I know those two, I can figure out 7 and 8 because, again, I can look at angle, the 55-degree angle and angle 7, they're on a straight line. So 180 minus 55, I do that math, I get 125. So angle 7 has to be 125 degrees, and that means angle 8 is also 125 degrees. Finally, sticking with the 55 degrees, I want you to look at angle 9. That corresponds with angle 6. So that angle 6 is also going to be 55 degrees. So now I'm almost done. I just need angles 5 and 11. So this is where you got to kind of take some of the knowledge you've learned. I want you to look at the middle of this figure. What shape do you see? Hopefully you see there's a triangle. And in that triangle, I actually know 2 of the 3 angles. I know angle 1, which is 45 degrees. I know the 55-degree angle that was given to me. But I don't know angle 5. So I'm talking about this triangle right in the middle there. I know 2 of the 3 angles, so I can add up the 2 I know. 45 plus 55, which is 100. And then I can do 180 minus 100 to figure out that angle 5 is 80 degrees. And if angle 5 is 80 degrees, then angle 11 is also going to be 80 degrees because those two angles correspond with each other. And look at that. We figured out them all. All right, that is it.